Hello, I'm Casey Aiken, and this is 21 This Week. Coming up next, Board of Election reversal on early voting centers. Rockville City elections start, toll lanes on the American Legion Bridge, and is the Democratic presidential race over now that Lunch Bucket Joe won't give it a go? Stay tuned. Our panel of insiders will give you the story behind the story. We're joined by the president of Progressive Maryland, Elbridge James, Democratic Party insider Sam Statland, former Republican candidate for state senate Jerry Cave, and education activist Cynthia Rubenstein. Stay tuned for these stories and more on the next 21 This Week. Last week, our lead story was on the breaking controversy surrounding the Republican plot to suppress Democratic voters in Montgomery County by moving an early voting location out of a Democratic majority precinct to a Republican one. After much outcry this week, the Republican-controlled local Board of Elections reversed itself. Sam, what makes this controversy hard to understand is that Democrats hold a 3-to-1 voter registration advantage over Republicans in the county. And in the most recent election of the state's 24 major jurisdictions, the Montgomery County turnout was in 22nd place, with only 5.6% of eligible voters taking advantage of early voting here in the county compared to 8.3% statewide. Isn't this a straw man argument of voter repression, and it actually flies in the face of the facts? It's not because the Republicans are trying to repress the vote. Nobody's taking advantage of early voting.
Listen, Casey, the nitty-gritty behind the scenes of this is that a couple of boards ago, a location was proposed out in the Damascus area, and it was turned down. And some Republicans on the board and some members of the Republican Party felt that they were snubbed by the Democrats. But what people fail to realize is that the locations themselves actually were picked by nonpartisan members of the Board of Elections staff. And the locations aren't by precinct. They're based in geographic area by population, which I believe back then was at around 500,000 people per voter in 5 locations. So they weren't moved out of one precinct to another. They were moved based on geographic area. And, as a matter of fact, it was resolved when the State Board of Elections said to our local Board of Elections, you guys better work this out and don't come back because you're not going to be happy with our outcome. So a compromise was worked out, and that compromise was led by our county executive, Ike Leggett, obviously a Democrat. And the decision was that a bill is going to be put through in Annapolis this next session, which will allow us one more precinct, a voting district, and that district will be out in the area where the Republicans say that we're underserved. It had nothing to do with politics. The only thing partisan about it, where the Republicans got their dander up and saw an opportunity to change locations.
Well, that's a wonderful spin on that, Sam. But let's ask Jerry what he thinks about the controversy. Weren't Democrats just concerned that moving the early voting location to a Republican majority precinct would increase voting by Republicans because Republicans and independents outvoted Democrats in the last early voting session?
As my mother used to say, and I haven't heard in a long time, that for Democrats to complain about voter suppression is unmitigated gall. They have suppressed minority votes, Republican votes, and you are talking about a trivial inconvenience. People die for a right to vote. My vote hadn't counted in this state in decades, and I'd crawl through broken glass to vote. To raise this as an issue is beyond trivial, but it's unbelievable for the Democrats to do this because we are underrepresented in county, state, federal, and and minorities
Well,
are
I'm gonna look at
underrepresented.
It's not the
It is
Democrats.
weapons of mass
Wait a minute.
destruction by the Democratic
It's not
Party
the Democrats'
when it comes to
fault
voting.
that
Wait a
you
minute.
guys can't.
It's gerrymandering,
It's
Sam.
not-
Be honest.
No, it's not
Jerry,
gerrymandering.
I want to go to his
We have
El-
half the representatives in the House.
If you had decent candidates, somebody might get elected.
The way you've carved it up, you got Jim Crow gerrymandering, and this
look,
is the only state that has
all
it.
this arguing aside, Elbridge
Yes.
was the outcome a fair one?
In terms of keeping it where it was,
Keeping it where it was and adding another precinct.
we would like to add another precinct. But in fact, that's up to the state and the legislators. The point of the fact is that we didn't want anything changed at this time because right now in Bethesda, you have the potential of a high voter turnout. I think it was said this is the first time it was in Bethesda, and that's usually the first times where they have lower turnout, and the next time it usually picks up.
Let's talk about
the
turnout
point.
Wait a minute. We're going to go on to another topic
Yeah.
because this is a dead issue now. It's been resolved. The Board of Elections is going to add a new precinct, but it's the whole allegations is what was interesting to watch. All right, the city of Rockville begins its election cycle for mayor and the four-person city council this October 24th in their early voting. In most years, the election in Montgomery County's largest city is a non-controversial affair. However, this year, a pro-business slate, which bills itself as Team Rockville, is running against the progressive incumbents on the council. Earlier this year, Rockville Mayor Bridget Donald Newton and Councilwoman Beryl Feinberg were the subject of controversy when they pushed through a zoning text amendment over the objections of the city planning board and staff that prevented the Sienna Company from developing an abandoned warehouse into a self-storage facility. Elbridge, these issues seem to be driving of late, lifting the building moratorium in the city of Rockville and not getting a development plan for Rockville Pike. Is this why there's a push to change the council?
Push to change the council is because there's no compromise. There's no way, in fact, that we can have some growth. Used to call smart growth without overpopulating or over density the area. The concern you have, especially I have concern with the business group coming in, is that if in fact they get their way, what will their way lead to? I've heard about high rises coming up and in fact putting more pollution and traffic down on Rockville Pike. A lot of us moved to Rockville, so in fact we had a small town feeling with a lot of some amenities. I've gotten phone calls saying, "Don't you want this to be another Bethesda?" No, I mean another Bethesda or Chevy Chase. No, I don't want it to be another Bethesda or Chevy Chase. I want it to be Rockville. And I want smart growth. I don't want where one side or the other side just in fact has their way and we have nothing but gridlock.
But isn't that the point? And that's the point of the their Team Rockville approach. Cynthia, Julie Palkovich, a current member of the council and a member of Team Rockville, described her first 2 years on the council as disappointing, but as divisive, saying that some of the biggest legislative accomplishments come in spite of members who only listen to naysayers. Why is development in Rockville so contentious?
Well, Elbridge touched on it. It's between residents of Rockville who want to keep the small town feel, and other residents of Rockville who want to see themselves or want the development, the kind of development that's more along the lines of what's happening in White Flint and north of Rockville, which is higher density, which is more intense, and would bring more, along with it would bring hopefully more affordable housing, more business, and more employment. But these are the two things that are causing the tension between the factions in Rockville. Is it the town of Rockville, or is it the more urbanized, higher developed city of Rockville?
What we're really
And
talking
people
about
would-
is development along Rockville Pike.
But people
for
would
the most
disagree
part.
with you in your characterization of the slate that's been formed as being pro-business, because other people in Rockville would say this is the progressive group. This is the group that wants to put in rules and regulations that would allow us to have more affordable housing, that would have more smart growth, that would actually informing new schools, be more in line with the Board of Education and their current philosophy of having so much roads and infrastructure in before more schools can be built, and Rockville is going to need more schools, where two of the incumbents, the ones you just mentioned, were absolutely against any of this, and they were actually harming the city, which harmed its tax base. You know, do you want an enclave within Montgomery County that looks the way it did 20 years ago? Or do you want an enclave that encourages some growth, smart growth, more jobs, increases the tax base, allows the city of Rockville to provide
But
more services
that's
for
a
its
controversy
citizens?
that Rockville has been struggling with, not just for the past 10 years, but really for 30 or 40 years between the controversy of whether it should grow or stay the same.
Yeah, but they're looking at it, this is, for an average Rockville citizen, we're seeing insider politics being played out with the consequences being faced by the citizens. In other words, I would like to have that group, including the current administration, do a more outreach to its community and do a more comprehensive plan.
Well,
we're concerned about not having a plan.
Well, the
Keeping
one
going,
point that
this
we
is
got to wrap this up and go to break. But the other point that we're talking about is the fact that we're shifting from a 2-year election cycle to a 4-year election cycle. So this decision is going to be very important, and it'll be playing out over the next 2 weeks. All right, when we come back from this short break, should there be toll lanes on the American Legion Bridge? And with Vice President Biden exiting stage left, has Hillary Clinton wrapped up the nomination? Stay tuned. And welcome back. Since the early 1960s, plans to build multiple bridge crossings the Potomac River connecting Maryland and Virginia have been proposed and debated. One early plan even had 3 concentric outer beltways with bridges. In 2014, Virginia Senator Mark Warner favored the building of an additional bridge, saying, "We can't keep funneling the traffic into these few choke points across the river, like the American Legion Bridge, which carries the Capital Beltway between Montgomery County and Fairfax County." This week, Montgomery County Council and its counterpart in Fairfax County offered yet another proposal, this one to extend the toll express lanes from the Beltway to I-270 as a means of reducing congestion. Elbridge, are adding toll lanes on the American Legion Bridge and up 270 the answer to our problems?
Not if you don't have construction. I think in Virginia, when they added the toll roads, they in fact expanded on the Beltway. If you just leave the bridge the way it is and add toll lanes, all you're going to say is, we're going to increase revenue, but you're going to force congestion into those remaining lanes. There's got to be another solution to that.
Would you be in favor of building another span to handle the additional traffic flow?
Yes, yeah, and in fact, if it could be done environmentally correctly, which I know is impossible, even another bridge somewhere. But
That's an oxymoron.
Yeah.
That's an
God,
oxymoron.
we're talking
Sam,
about the pipeline again.
Sam, Senator Warner said a lack of infrastructure investment is limiting long-term economic prosperity in the region. So why is there so much opposition to building a bridge connecting the I-270 corridor with the I-66 corridor and bringing business from both sides of the river?
It was announced on the radio today on one of the commentaries that shows that Northern Virginia is outgrowing Montgomery County. So in ways, I think what Senator Warner was saying was self-serving for the people of Virginia. But when it comes to the question of other bridge crossings, the last bridge crossings built were in the 60s when we built the Beltway. There were other plans. A crossing at Point of Rocks would be more than acceptable. I think that would be good. But of course, we all know that the biggest objection is going through the agricultural reserve. Now, why somebody has to object to a stretch of road, what is it, 1,000 feet, a roadway with, and in a parkway setting to ease traffic to 270 is beyond me. I mean, I don't know how many dislocated sheep and cows there would be in strawberry plants, but to me it would seem reasonable, and it would absolutely help Montgomery County in its development.
Cynthia, what do you think about this?
Well, these are all interesting points of discussion, but there's no infrastructure funding for this in the near term, midterm, or long term. And so what I think heads of jurisdictions really have to talk about, are the Band-Aids. The continuing express lanes over the Legion Bridge to 270, that is low-hanging fruit. I think the best they can do right now is to talk about
There's never enough money for construction
There's never
projects.
enough, but
Jerry, what do
that
you
would
think?
be an enormous infrastructure project, and it would be you think the ICC was difficult to get through after 50 years?
Right.
Look at another bridge.
This would be better.
Jerry,
This
But it would
whole
be-
issue is
it would be just
grotesquely
as hard.
unfair and dangerous. It's unfair to the millions of man hours and woman hours that are lost by people sitting in traffic. Do you understand that every 2 days the equivalent of the entire population of DC crosses Legion Bridge? And talk about a Band-Aid that's going to go to nowhere. This is ridiculous. We need another bridge, not only so people can get home to their families, for goodness sake, but think about it from a security standpoint. One bomb on the Legion Bridge, and you're going to paralyze the Washington, D.C. area, which is the home of the national government, for those of you who haven't been paying attention to that fact. So it's important to the country as a whole, but I mean, it is just unbelievable. For 40 years we've known we need to do this, and it's called leadership to get it through. People are going to object. That's right, but I completely agree with Sam. We need the bridge. And as for this business of the agricultural reserve, for the benefit of a few elitists that twice every decade drive through it, to deny this to all these people is just reprehensible.
I think you're being unfair to those who want to.
No, it's unfair to the majority
who want
to have
to-
a handful of
to-
people in the ag reserve deny people from getting home. I mean,
But the point that we have to make is, if we want to have future growth and business growth in Montgomery County, we have to be connected to Dulles Airport and the expressways leading in Virginia. Otherwise, we're landlocking ourselves and preventing our future
if you
growth.
don't have another percentage of growth, it's unfair to
I wanna
the
go to
people
Sam.
in their cars to have to sit and wait.
2 points.
Quickly.
Number one, the farmers in the ag zone are going to be able to grow less crops because Montgomery County just knocked out a lot of the pesticides they use on the crops. Number two, when you talk about extending the toll road to 270, the question is why shouldn't it be extended further? And the answer is because in the original design of the Beltway, bends and a chicane was put in between Connecticut Avenue and 270, which has the highest accident rate on the Beltway, that would make putting in a toll lane there almost impossible.
What a perfect place, because it's already gridlocked there anyway, to have the toll booths.
Terrible.
All right, we're going to our last topic tonight. And for weeks, the best known secret inside the Beltway was that Vice President Joe Biden was only waiting for that one perfect moment to announce that he was running for the Democratic presidential nomination. The whispers were everywhere. It'll be after the first Democratic debate. Oh no. It'll be after the big Benghazi hearings. Yet, in a stunning turn of events, the vice president reserved the Rose Garden this week and announced that he was not running. And in the opinion of the same experts who were certain of the Biden candidacy, this now guarantees the nomination for Hillary Clinton. Cynthia, a local basketball coach once said that the opera isn't over until the fat lady sings, to bolster his team's faint chances of making the playoffs. Biden may not be the fat lady, but does his withdrawal hand the nomination to Mrs. Clinton?
It doesn't hand the nomination to Mrs. Clinton, but it does give her a sense of relief, because if he had entered the race, he would have drawn votes away from her. But aside from the fact, what may have helped play into his decision is her strong performance in the debates, as well as her performance in the Benghazi
let's
hearing.
not kid ourselves. It's all
she's
about the
been-
money.
she's
He wasn't raising the money.
She's been commanding and strong, and she has given many, many more reasons for American voters to support her.
Thank you.
And she had her biggest fundraising day the day after the Benghazi debates. But the real thing that impacts upon Maryland is Elijah Cummings' decision. We want to know whether Elijah Cummings is going to enter the race for the U.S. Senate.
I thought maybe there would be an
Well,
announcement
bef-
today.
Before we get to
However-
that, I want to ask Jerry about the effect of the Biden nomination. And Jerry, you Republicans, do you even care who the Democratic nominee is? Since you're not going to be able to settle on a candidate until hell freezes over.
Casey, let me update you on the calendar. It's 2015. The election's next year. We got a year. We got plenty of time, so stop rushing us. Because you see, in the Republican Party, we actually have debates of ideas and people and diversity of people. And on the Democratic side, they have a coronation of the Medicis candidate to run through and run
Not so.
things.
The Democratic
you have
primary
no debate. You have nobody left.
was much
How
more
are they gonna fill the
substantive
dead
than
air for
anything
the
the
next
Republicans
5
have
debates?
had.
All right.
Well, Martin O'Malley and
Okay.
and to
You know,
answer your
this issue-
question,
this
Joe
is-
Biden
yeah.
is where he always was, in the waiting room to hear the one word that won't come out with this administration, but he is there in case
All right,
he
well,
gets indicted.
Look, that ain't going to happen.
It isn't,
Please.
but that's his only.
Come on.
That is his only
That's
purpose.
another-
Jerry,
talk
listen-
about being upset because of
no,
Democrats
wait a minute.
speaking
Let's-
about
let's
the
get
president.
beyond-
I wanna
the word
that's
is
a
team-
terrible
teamwork.
Elbridge, I want to get beyond this
Teamwork.
because the Biden thing, you know, dropped like a stone as soon as he announced his resignation. Anyway, I mean that he wasn't going to run. Elbridge, let's answer Sam's question. Is Elijah Cummings going to get in the race for the U.S. Senate?
To be very honest, I don't know. There are, like for instance with Biden, there are those insiders that would like him to run. I am not certain as to their motives all the way, but there are insiders that do want him to run, and he is seriously considering, but again, like Biden, being very closed-mouthed about it.
Elijah Cummings.
But isn't Van Hollen running behind Donna Edwards?
Depends
Is
on
that-
what polling you're looking at. But
Yeah.
but what is clear
way
is
too
that
early
if
to do
Elijah Cummings entered the race, he would be
Clear the
leagues
field?
ahead.
He would clear the
Yes.
field?
So here's the thing.
either one.
All right,
Elijah
Sam,
Cummings.
wrap it up.
Elijah Cummings is a great statesman. He does things that represents the best interest of the electorate. And I think the question that he's really looking at is where he serves the electorate better as a member of Congress representing his district, which, as we know, includes Baltimore City and parts of Anne Arundel, and I guess Howard and a couple of the other counties.
With
Yeah.
the way it's
Or is he
gerrymandered,
better-
it probably covers
Or
about
is he
half the
better
counties.
off staying in Congress and perhaps at one point in time being Speaker of the House? It's a very, very difficult choice.
But why
I
would
On
love
this
that
one,
Elijah
money is
Cummings.
going to count.
And this
Who's
one,
raising
money
the
is
money?
gonna
Count whatever he
Money
does.
And,
Yes.
and in all things politics, money,
Money
counts.
counts.
And now we're going to go to our parting shots, so stay tuned for parting shots after this short break. And welcome back. Now with parting shots, Sam Statland.
Well, last week I mentioned to you that Mobile Medical Care, my pet charity, Mobile Medical Care, has received a federally qualified healthcare organization
Grant.
grant. It's $400,000 a year, and the object of this grant is to provide healthcare services in the underserved areas of Montgomery County. Yes, there are underserved areas of Montgomery County, and this particular area that we're focusing on is the Aspen Hill area, north of Hewitt, up to about Belpre, from about Rippling Brook over to the left to about the city of Rockville. Folks, if you need health care and you can't afford it, or you're a Medicaid patient and you need a provider, the place for you to go is to Mobile Medical Care at St. Mary's Church in Aspen Hill. Right now the clinic is up to 2 days. We'd like to see it expanded to 5 days. We're there. We want you. We'll serve you. You will get absolutely dynamite health care.
Thank you, Sam. Elbridge James, your parting shot, please.
My parting shot goes to the governor. Again, I'm going back to his veto of the Returning Citizens' Right to Vote bill legislation. We have 40,000 Marylanders, Maryland citizens, who should have gained their right to vote. His veto will be overridden. I mean, other parties, part of the other shot goes back to the Republican Party. Act like you belong in terms of the Board of Election race. Think it through before you offer something up that get put back into our face.
Thank you, Elbridge. Cynthia Rubenstein, your parting shot.
Okay, in the theme of education and youth development, I went to a presentation today of a report called Connecting Youth to Opportunity, and about the 8,000 disconnected youth in Montgomery County who are not in school and not working, and ways that the school system, public safety institutions, and other Montgomery County institutions can put those youth back in education and in the workforce.
Thank you, Cynthia. Jerry Cave, your parting shot.
I'd like to answer a question I haven't been asked. Probably never will be. Is it all lives matter or Black Lives Matter? And the answer is clearly Black Lives Matter, because Black lives are being lost. They're not being lost to the police. They're being lost in the cities that have been controlled by Democrats 80% to 100% for 2 generations. And they don't get solved, but you have almost mass murder going on in Democratic districts. In Republican districts that are just as small, just as poor, and have more guns, they don't have murder rates like that. So yes, it is. Black Lives Matter, but in the Democratic Party, the Democratic governors, Democratic mayors, it doesn't matter much.
Thank you, Jerry. I want to thank everyone here on the panel today for being here for a very lively and spirited debate. I want to thank the audience for tuning each and in every week to Montgomery County's hardest-hitting political talk show. For 21 this week, I'm Casey Aiken, and remember, you can like us on Facebook and you can follow us on Twitter. You can watch the show on the promos listed at the Times. You can watch us on Sunday night instead of 60 Minutes, a much better thing to do.